Communications Officer Ji-won was halfway through her shift at Outpost Vigilance when the alarm started screaming. The Deep Space Monitoring Station orbited Neptune, far from Earth's busy inner system. Most days were boring. Technicians tracked asteroid trajectories and checked for equipment malfunctions. Nothing exciting ever happened out here. Until today, the signal came from outside human space. Way outside, it was using old Earth languages. Languages from 300 years ago. Ji-won's hand shook as she ran the decryption programs. The message repeated in 17 different languages. She recognized most of them. English, Mandarin, Spanish. Others she had only seen in historical databases. The content made her blood run cold. An alien civilization was calling for help. They were under attack by something called the Vraketh Swarm. They were losing. They were dying. And they were asking humanity to help them. The same humanity they had quarantined 3 centuries ago. The same humanity they had told to stay away from the rest of the galaxy. Ji-won immediately forwarded the signal to Earth Command. Then she sat back and tried to process what just happened. Humanity was not alone in the universe. They had known that once briefly before the quarantine. But 300 years of silence had made most people forget. Now someone out there remembered. Someone out there needed them. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Kyung-soo received the signal in his office overlooking the Pacific. He was old now. 67 years spent in military service. He had fought in the colony wars when Mars tried to declare independence. He had defended the belt miners from corporate raiders. He had seen combat in peace, victory, and loss. But this was something entirely new. He played the message 3 times. Each time he noticed something different. The desperation in the voice that recorded it. The technical sophistication needed to send a faster-than-light transmission. The fact that they kept records of human languages from 300 years ago. They had been watching. Even while keeping humanity locked away, they had been watching. Kyung-soo called an emergency meeting of the Unified Council. Representatives from Earth's 12 colony worlds gathered via holographic link. Mars, Europa, Titan, and 9 others. 300 years of isolation had forced humanity to spread out. To terraform new worlds, to build habitats in the harshest environments. They had thrived not because the galaxy welcomed them, but because they refused to stay small. The debate started immediately. Some counselors were angry. The aliens had abandoned humanity, sealed them away like a dangerous disease. Why should humans risk their lives to save people who treated them like monsters? Others were cautious. This could be a trap. Maybe the aliens wanted to test humanity's military strength. Maybe they planned to destroy Earth the moment human ships left Sol system. Dr. Sungmin spoke passionately for helping. He was the chief xenobiologist, though he had never seen an alien in his life. He had spent his entire career studying theoretical alien life, preparing for first contact that might never come. Now it was here. Real aliens, a real crisis. This was humanity's chance to join the galactic community, to prove they were more than violent primitives, to show they could be heroes instead of threats. Captain Da-un sat quietly through most of the debate. She commanded the EDF Relentless, the most advanced warship in Earth's fleet. At 38, she was young for such a command, but she had earned it defending Mars from a catastrophic asteroid swarm. She had made impossible decisions under pressure. She had saved millions of lives through tactics that military academy professors still studied. When she finally spoke, everyone listened. Her proposal was simple. Send a fleet, but send it ready for anything. Go in strong. Make it clear that humanity was not coming as desperate supplicants or naive fools. They were coming as equals. Ready to help if the situation was real. Ready to fight if it was a trap. Show the galaxy that Earth remembered its rejection but would still do the right thing. Kyung-soo ran the analysis. The signal's origin point was weeks away even with human faster-than-light drives. The energy signatures in the background of the transmission were consistent with massive fleet combat. Whatever was happening out there was real and it was big. If they ignored the signal and this threat eventually reached human space, they would face it alone. If they helped and survived, they gained allies. The math was brutal but clear. The Unified Council voted. It was not unanimous, but it was decisive. Humanity would respond. They would send the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet, 50 warships, 5 dreadnoughts, 20 cruisers, 25 destroyers. Enough firepower to level a continent or defend a solar system. The fleet would carry the best weapons humanity had developed. Railguns that could punch through any known armor. Plasma torpedoes that burned hotter than stars. Nuclear mines. Biological countermeasures, everything. Captain Da-Yun received her orders. She would command the fleet as it moved toward the signal's origin. Her mission parameters were broad. Assess the situation. Make first contact. Offer assistance if appropriate. Defend human interests if threatened. Use her judgment. Kyung-soo trusted her. That trust was terrifying and empowering at the same time. Aboard the Relentless, Lieutenant Commander Hai-Wan prepared tactical simulations. She was only 29 but already legendary in military circles for her strategic thinking. She could see patterns others missed, predict enemy movements 3 steps ahead. Now she was preparing for combat against an enemy they knew nothing about, alien technology. Unknown tactics. She ran hundreds of scenarios, preparing for every possibility she could imagine. Dr. Sung-min assembled his first contact team, linguists, cultural specialists, medical personnel trained to handle unknown biology. They packed diplomatic gifts, prepared universal greeting protocols, studied every scrap of information from the 300-year-old first contact files. Sung-min could barely sleep. His dream was coming true. He would meet aliens, talk to them, learn from them. If they all survived. The fleet gathered at the Mars orbital yards. 50 ships, their hulls dark and angular. Human ships did not look elegant like the old Union vessels they had seen in archived files. Human ships looked brutal, efficient, covered in weapon batteries and armor plating. Every surface served a purpose. No decoration, no wasted space. Just function engineers made final checks. Supplies were loaded. Crews ran through drills. Marines practiced boarding actions against simulated alien vessels. Medical bays stocked supplies for treating unknown injuries. Every department prepared for the impossible, because that was what Earth trained them to do. Expect the impossible. Prepare for it. Survive it. Captain Da-Yun addressed the fleet before departure. Her face appeared on screens across 50 warships. She spoke simply. They were going into the unknown. They might face advanced hostiles. They might discover the signal was a trap. But they would go anyway, because that was what humanity did. They took risks. They helped those who needed it. And they never ever backed down from a challenge. The crews cheered, not because they were bloodthirsty, not because they wanted war, but because they were human. They had grown up on stories of Earth's harsh history, survival against impossible odds, adaptation in the face of extinction. They were the children of a death world. Hurricanes did not scare them. Earthquakes did not stop them. Alien threats? Just another challenge. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Kyung-soo watched from his office as the fleet prepared to jump. He had authorized the mission. Now he could only wait and hope he had not sent his people to their deaths. The 3rd Expeditionary Fleet was the best humanity had. If they failed, if the aliens proved hostile, if something went wrong, Earth would be vulnerable. But the risk had to be taken. Isolation was no longer safety. The galaxy had called. Humanity would answer. The jump drives powered up. 50 ships began generating the massive energy fields needed to tear through space-time. The process took an hour. Engineers monitored every system. Navigators triple-checked coordinates. No one wanted to end up lost in deep space because of a calculation error. Finally, Captain Da-Eun gave the order. Jump. The 3rd Expeditionary Fleet vanished from Sol system in 50 simultaneous flashes of twisted light. They left behind Earth in safety. They headed toward danger and the unknown. They carried humanity's hopes and fears. They wore Earth's blue and white insignia on their hulls, a planet wrapped in a guardian's fist, a promise. Humanity protects what matters. The journey would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare, 3 weeks to wonder what they would find. 3 weeks before humanity met the Galactic Union and changed the galaxy forever. The combined fleet held position in the Kepler expanse. Human ships formed a defensive perimeter around the damaged Union vessels. Sensors detected Vraketh scout ships probing the edges of the asteroid field. The swarm knew something was here. They were searching. It was only a matter of time before they committed to an attack. Hours, maybe. A day at most. Captain Da-Yun called an emergency tactical conference. Union officers gathered in the Infinite Accord's war room alongside human commanders. High Admiral Bora looked exhausted. She had attended dozens of these meetings over the past months. Everyone ended the same way. Retreat, minimize casualties. By time, nothing worked. The swarm just kept coming. Lieutenant Commander HFY stood at the holographic display. She was young, too young to command such respect in Union military culture. But when she spoke, everyone paid attention. She had spent 3 days analyzing every piece of swarm combat data the Union possessed. Battle recordings, ship movements, attack patterns. Now she understood their enemy. And she knew how to hurt them. HFY began her briefing. The Verketh relied on 2 main advantages. First, overwhelming numbers. They could afford losses because they grew their fleet from consumed resources. Second, rapid adaptation. They learned from every engagement, copied enemy tactics, incorporated captured technology. The Union's defensive strategy played directly into both advantages. By fighting conservatively, they gave the swarm time to adapt. By retreating, they gave the swarm more resources to consume. She proposed a different approach: aggression, overwhelming force. Hit the swarm so hard and so fast they could not adapt. Use every weapon system simultaneously: kinetic railguns, plasma torpedoes, nuclear mines, biological agents. Throw everything at them. Make it so chaotic they could not process the data. Turn their adaptation mechanism into a liability by overloading it with information. The Union officers looked horrified. Counselor Taeyang spoke first. This was total war. Casualties would be catastrophic. Ships would be lost. Crews would die. The Union military doctrine emphasized preservation of life. Accepting losses went against everything they believed. Surely there was another way. Captain Daun met Taeyang's eyes. Her voice was cold. War's catastrophic. You want another way? There is no other way. Your people tried finding one for 6 months. It did not work. You are losing. Your civilians are dying. Your worlds are burning. You asked for humanity's help. This is how humanity fights. We learned the hard way that sometimes the only path to peace is through violence. High Admiral Bora felt the weight of the decision crushing her. She was a military officer. She understood necessary sacrifice. But this felt different. Felt brutal. Then again, what choice did they have? The swarm would not negotiate. Would not show mercy. Trying to fight them ethically just meant dying slowly. Maybe it was time to fight dirty. Fight to win instead of fighting to delay. HFY continued. The plan had a second phase. Draw the swarm into a trap. The asteroid field was perfect for it. Make the Union fleet look vulnerable. Damaged engines. Weak shields. The swarm would commit fully to finish them off. Then the human fleet would spring the ambush from 3 directions. Catch them in a kill box with nowhere to run. Dr. Sungmin added his part. He had been studying swarm biology. They were biomechanical, partly organic. They consumed matter for energy and raw materials. The asteroids in this field contained high concentrations of organic compounds. If those compounds were altered with a synthetic toxin, one designed to look organic but break down swarm cellular structures, they would poison themselves while trying to feed. Archivist Hyunwoo was stunned. Humans had designed a bioweapon specifically targeting the swarm. In 3 days, based on limited data, his databases held millions of references to human military history. Their tendency toward weapons development was well documented. But seeing it in practice was different. These were not scientists playing at war. These were soldiers who understood science as a weapon. He asked how they developed such weapons so quickly. Dr. Sungmin looked uncomfortable. Earth had contingency plans for hostile first contact. Plans developed over 3 centuries of isolation. Plans for fighting advanced aliens if they ever came back. Plans no one wanted to use but everyone knew might be necessary. The isolation taught humanity to prepare for the worst. Always. Bora made her decision. She approved the plan. They would fight the human way. Use human tactics. Accept human leadership. What was the alternative? Keep losing? Keep retreating until there was nowhere left to run? At least this way they had a chance. A real chance. For the first time in months, victory seemed possible instead of impossible. The fleet moved into position. Human engineers worked alongside Union technicians. They showed them how to operate weapon systems designed for maximum destruction. Railguns that fired metal slugs at ridiculous velocities. Plasma torpedoes that burned hot enough to vaporize armor. Nuclear mines that created miniature suns. The Union crews were not used to such brutal firepower. Their ships carried weapons, but defensive ones, designed to disable rather than destroy. Human weapons had only one purpose: kill the enemy. Lieutenant Commander HFY ran training sessions for Union tactical officers. She taught them aggressive engagement patterns. How to focus fire, how to target critical systems, how to exploit weaknesses ruthlessly. Some Union officers struggled with the concepts. They kept trying to find ways to minimize enemy casualties. HFY had to remind them repeatedly. The swarm was not surrendering, was not negotiating. Every ship destroyed now was thousands of lives saved later. Meanwhile, human crews seeded the asteroids with Dr. Sungmin's toxin. It was invisible, odorless, would register as normal organic matter to swarm sensors. They would consume it eagerly, only realize their mistake when their systems started failing. It was cruel. It was efficient. It was human. Archivist Hyunwoo found Captain Da-yoon on the observation deck of the Relentless. The view showed the combined fleet preparing for battle. Union ships with their elegant curves alongside human vessels with brutal angles. It looked wrong somehow, like mixing poetry with violence. But maybe that was what they needed. Poetry had not stopped the swarm. Maybe violence would. He asked Da-eun a question that had been troubling him. Did humanity really have contingency plans for every possible scenario? Plans for alien invasion? For AI rebellion? For cosmic horrors? She smiled, but there was no humor in it. Earth taught humans to expect the impossible. Their planet threw everything at them. Asteroids, ice ages, supervolcanoes, pandemics. They survived by preparing for disasters that seemed absurd until they happened. So yes, they had plans. Lots of plans. And they hoped never to use most of them. Hyunwoo processed this information. Perhaps the Union had made a mistake 300 years ago, not in recognizing humanity's danger, but in seeing danger as purely negative. Sometimes danger was necessary. Sometimes you needed people willing to do terrible things to prevent worse things. The swarm proved that. Ethical warfare had failed. Now they needed warriors who understood that some enemies could not be reasoned with, only defeated. The preparations took 18 hours. Every ship reported ready. Weapons loaded, shields at maximum, crews at battle stations. The Union vessels transmitted false distress signals, made their engines flicker like they were failing, positioned themselves to look vulnerable, bait in the trap. Then the sensors detected them, Fryketh signatures, thousands of them. The swarm had found the Union fleet and they were coming in force. Biomechanical vessels of every size, from small fighters to massive dreadnoughts, all moving with hive mind coordination, all hungry, all certain of victory because they always won. On the bridge of the Relentless, Captain Da-yoon watched the swarm approach. Her crew was silent, focused, ready. She had trained them for this, drilled them until aggressive tactics became instinct. Now it was time to see if humans really were as dangerous as everyone believed. Time to see if Deathworld survivors could teach the galaxy a new way to fight. The swarm entered the asteroid field. They moved toward the Union ships with predatory confidence. Sensors showed them already starting to consume asteroid material, feeding, growing stronger. Except this time the food was poisoned. This time they were not hunting prey. They were walking into a kill zone. Da-eun counted down, waited for the perfect moment. The swarm had to be fully committed. No escape routes, nowhere to run. She watched the tactical display. Swarm ships spreading throughout the field, getting closer to the Union fleet. Almost there, almost. Now Da-yoon gave the order. Every human ship opened fire simultaneously. The Kepler expanse lit up like a newborn star. The human fleet struck like a hammer from 3 directions. Railgun rounds crossed the void at impossible speeds. Each slug carried enough kinetic energy to punch through swarm armor like paper. Plasma torpedoes followed, burning trails of superheated matter through the darkness. Nuclear mines detonated in carefully planned sequences. The Kepler expanse became a storm of fire and metal. On the Relentless, Lieutenant Commander HFY coordinated the assault with terrifying precision. Her fingers danced across holographic controls. She called targets, redirected fire, adjusted vectors in real time. The swarm tried to adapt, tried to respond. But they had never faced this before. Humans did not fight like the Union, did not try to minimize damage. They maximized it. Every shot aimed to kill, every weapon designed to destroy completely. Captain Da-eun watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The swarm was reeling, confused. They relied on pattern recognition, learning enemy tactics and countering them. But humans were not using tactics they could learn. Humans were improvising. changing approaches every few seconds, fighting chaotically but effectively. It was organized chaos, and the swarm could not process it fast enough. The poisoned asteroids were working. Swarm ships that had consumed the contaminated material began showing system failures, biomechanical components breaking down, shields flickering, weapons powering down. They tried to purge the toxin, but it was too late. Dr. Sung-min had designed it to spread through their systems like a disease. Fast, efficient, deadly. Aboard the Infinite Accord, High Admiral Bora felt the battle through her psychic senses. She could feel the swarm's confusion. It's fear, yes, they felt fear. The hive mind was capable of emotion when threatened. They had expected easy prey, expected the Union to run like always. Instead, they faced warriors who fought with savage determination. Warriors who seemed to enjoy the violence. That was not quite right. Humans did not enjoy killing, but they were very, very good at it. Bora gave the order for Union ships to advance. For months, her fleet had retreated. Now they pushed forward, following human tactical patterns, focusing fire on damaged swarm vessels, showing no mercy. It felt wrong, felt brutal, but it felt effective. For the first time since this war began, the swarm was losing, actually losing. Not just temporarily pushed back, destroyed Counselor Tae-yang coordinated Union shields. His species excelled at defensive technology. He used that expertise to protect human ships when their own shields failed. It was teamwork. Union defense combined with human offense. The swarm had adapted to fighting each style separately. But together they were something new. Something the hive mind had no answer for. A human destroyer took heavy damage. Its engine was compromised. Hull breached in 3 sections. The captain refused to retreat. Instead, he aimed his crippled ship at a swarm dreadnought and fired every remaining weapon. Then he rammed it. The collision destroyed both vessels. But the swarm dreadnought had been coordinating an entire attack wing. Without it, that wing fell into disarray. Union ships tore them apart. Archivist Hyunwoo monitored communications. He heard the human crews. Their voices were calm, professional. They reported damage without panic. Coordinated repairs under fire. When ships were dying, crews evacuated in perfect order. No screaming, no chaos. Just trained responses to crisis. These were people who had drilled for disaster so many times it became routine. Deathworld survivors indeed. Captain Da-yeon broadcast to the combined fleet. Her voice carried across dozens of ships. Hundreds of species. She reminded them what they were fighting for. Not for territory. Not for resources. For survival. For the right to exist. Earth tried to kill humanity every day for millions of years. Humans survived by refusing to give up. The swarm was just another challenge. Another threat to overcome. And humanity had overcome worse. The Union crews heard this. Felt their own courage growing. Humans were not superhuman. Not invincible. But they had something the Union had lost. They had hope born from hardship. They knew what it meant to face extinction and survive anyway. That knowledge was contagious. Union officers started taking risks, making aggressive calls, fighting like humans taught them. The swarm tried to retreat, tried to escape the kill zone, but human ships blocked every exit. Pursuit craft harried the fleeing vessels, picking them off one by one. No mercy, no quarter. The Union way would have been to let them go. Accept the victory and regroup. The human way was different. Finish the job. Make sure the threat could not return. It was brutal. It was necessary. And it worked. Hours later, the battle ended. The Kepler expanse was full of debris, thousands of swarm vessels destroyed, dozens of human and Union ships damaged, some beyond repair. The casualties were heavy. But they won. Actually won. Not a strategic retreat disguised as victory. A real crushing defeat of the swarm. The first one in this entire war. Dr. Sung-min reviewed the bioweapon data. The toxin had exceeded all projections. The swarm's adaptation mechanisms could not compensate. They consumed it thinking it was food. By the time they realized the danger, it had spread through their systems. Thousands of ships poisoned. He felt proud and sick at the same time. He had created a weapon of mass destruction, saved countless lives by taking others. This was the cost of survival. In the Infinite Accord's war room, the leadership gathered. Human and Union officers standing together, looking at damage reports, casualty lists, victory assessments. High Admiral Bora approached Captain Da-yeon. The patterns on her skin showed respect mixed with lingering fear. She thanked Dayun formally, said something she never thought she would say. Humanity was exactly as dangerous as the Council feared. And that danger just saved the Union. But Lieutenant Commander Haywan raised a concern. The swarm would adapt. They learned from every battle. This victory bought time but did not end the war. The hive mind would analyze what happened here, develop counters. Next time would be harder. They needed a permanent solution. Needed to strike at the heart of the swarm before it could recover. Archivist Hyunwoo had been researching, cross-referencing old data with new intelligence. He found it. The swarm's hive mind had a physical center, a neural complex located on a planet in the Andron cluster. That was where the collective intelligence resided. Destroy that and the entire swarm would collapse into mindless drones. Disable the brain and the body dies. Captain Daeun studied the location data. The Andron cluster was deep in swarm space, surrounded by their remaining fleets, millions of vessels, orbital defense platforms, biomechanical weapons they had not encountered yet. Getting there would be nearly impossible. Fighting through to the hive mind would be suicide, but it was also the only way to end this war permanently. She looked around the room, at Union officers who had learned to fight aggressively, at human crews who had proven their worth, at ships damaged but not broken, at allies forged in fire. They had done the impossible once already. Survived when survival seemed unlikely, won when victory seemed impossible. Maybe they could do it again. Daeun made her decision. They would go to the Andron cluster, would take the fight to the swarm's home, would end this threat once and for all. It was dangerous, likely fatal. But sitting here waiting for the swarm to come back stronger was also fatal. At least attacking gave them control. Let them choose the time and place. Humans were good at fighting on their own terms. High Admiral Bora agreed immediately. She would commit every remaining Union ship, call in reinforcements from the core worlds. This would be the final battle. Everything they had against everything the swarm had. Winner takes the galaxy. Loser faces extinction. No middle ground. No compromise. Just war in its purest form. Survival of the strongest counselor. Tae Yang sent a message to Earth. Requested additional human forces. Fleet Admiral Kyung-soo responded within hours. He was sending the 1st and 2nd Expeditionary Fleets. Another 100 warships, including experimental vessels carrying weapons Earth had never deployed before. Prototype systems designed for worst-case scenarios. This qualified Kyung-soo also sent a personal message to Daeun. He told her Earth was proud. Humanity had proven itself, shown the galaxy what Deathworld survivors could accomplish. But he also warned her. The mission to Andron Cluster was dangerous beyond measure. She should not throw away her life needlessly. The galaxy needed humans like her. Earth needed leaders who understood both war and peace. Daeun read the message 3 times. Then she deleted it. She would do her duty. Would lead this mission. Would end the swarm or die trying. That was what leadership meant. Going first into danger. Taking the risks you asked others to take. She was human. Descended from people who climbed mountains because they were there. Who sailed oceans to see what was on the other side. Who went to space because staying on one planet was too small a dream. The combined fleet began preparations. This time they were not running, not hiding. They were hunting. And the prey was the most dangerous thing the galaxy had ever created. But humans came from a world that created predators for breakfast. The Vraketh swarm was about to learn what that meant. About to discover why Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world. About to understand that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or tactics. It was their absolute refusal to surrender. Ever. The Infinite Accord drifted through the Kepler expanse like a wounded animal seeking shelter. High Admiral Bora stared at the damage report scrolling across her command console. 3 more ships lost in the retreat, shields failing on 7 others, engines damaged on half the remaining fleet. They had maybe 2 days before the Vraketh found them again, maybe less. The Kepler expanse was a graveyard of dead stars and asteroid fields. Radiation made sensors unreliable. Dense debris provided cover. It was as good a hiding place as they could find. Engineers worked desperately to repair critical systems. Medical bays overflowed with wounded. Morale was breaking. Bora could feel it through her psychic connections. Fear. Hopelessness. The feeling that they were just delaying the inevitable. She wondered if the human signal had even been received. 3 weeks since transmission, No response. Maybe humans had destroyed themselves in the past 3 centuries. Maybe they never developed faster than light travel. Maybe they got the message and decided the Union deserved its fate. Bora could not blame them if they did. Then the sensors started screaming. Multiple hyperspace signatures, massive energy readings. The swarm had found them. Bora felt her heart sink. They were not ready. Could not run. Could barely fight. This was the end. She opened a channel to all ships, prepared to give her final orders. She would tell them to scatter, give everyone a chance. Some might escape. Some might survive to warn the core worlds. But the sensor data did not match swarm signatures. These ships were different, smaller, more organized. They dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, 50 vessels arranged in a defensive grid. Their hulls were dark, angular, covered in what looked like weapon batteries. So many weapons. More guns than any Union ship would carry. These ships were built for war. A transmission came through, in perfect Union standard language. The voice was female, confident, controlled. She identified herself as Captain Da-Yoon of the Earth Defense Force. The words took a moment to register. Earth, Defense, Force, Humans. The humans had come. The bridge of the Infinite Accord fell silent. Every crew member stared at the holographic display showing the human fleet. Captain Da-Yoon continued speaking. She said they had received the distress call. They were here to help. They requested information on the current situation and permission to dock for diplomatic discussions. The tone was polite but firm, not asking for permission exactly, more like announcing their presence and expecting cooperation. Bora liked that confidence. It was something the Union fleet had lost weeks ago. Counselor Tae Yang stood beside Bora on the bridge. His crystalline form was pulsing with colors that indicated shock and relief. These were really humans. The quarantined species. They had not only survived, they had thrived. Built warships, developed better, faster than light drives than the Union possessed. And they had come. Actually came to help. Archivist Hyunwoo processed the new data rapidly. Human ship designs were fascinating. Redundant systems. Heavy armor, weapons positioned for overlapping fields of fire. These were not exploration vessels or trade ships. These were warships. Pure and simple. Built by a species that understood violence intimately. He ran probability calculations. If the humans proved hostile, the Union fleet would be destroyed in minutes. They had no choice but to trust. Bora responded to Captain Da-Yoon's transmission. She explained the situation briefly. The Vryketh swarm had invaded Union space 6 months ago. They had destroyed half the Union fleet, consumed dozens of worlds. The Union was in retreat. They were desperate. They needed help, any help. She tried to keep the desperation out of her voice but knew she failed. Captain Da-Yoon requested a face-to-face meeting. Bora agreed immediately. Hyunwoo warned against it. Humans could be dangerous. They should maintain distance until trust was established. But Bora overruled him. If they could not trust the humans enough to meet them, why call them in the first place? Besides, what choice did they have? Die proud and alone or risk everything on this desperate gamble? A human shuttle launched from the Relentless. It crossed the space between fleets carefully. Union traffic control guided it to the Infinite Accord's main docking bay. Bora gathered the council members to greet their guests, or their executioners. At this point, she was not entirely sure which. The airlock cycled, the door opened, and humanity walked aboard a Union ship for the first time in 300 years. Captain Da-Yoon entered first. She was shorter than most Union species, maybe 1.7 meters tall. But the way she moved made her seem larger, controlled, efficient. Her eyes scanned the docking bay constantly, assessing threats, identifying exits, pure predator instinct. Behind her came Lieutenant Commander Hae Won and Dr. Sung Min. The young tactical officer moved like a fighter, ready for combat despite being on a diplomatic mission. The scientist looked around with barely contained excitement. He was smiling. Actually smiling? Like meeting aliens was the best thing that ever happened to him. Maybe it was. Bora stepped forward to greet them. She tried not to let her surprise show. Humans looked so much like a dozen other bipedal species. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. But there was something in their posture, the way they held themselves, like they expected danger around every corner, like they were ready to fight at any moment. It made sense. Deathworld survivors would develop those instincts, but seeing it in person was unsettling. The introductions were formal, polite. Everyone was very careful with their words. They moved to a conference room. Tae-Yang activated the holographic displays. He showed the humans everything. Swarm attack patterns, casualty reports, failed defense strategies, the slow collapse of Union space. He did not try to hide how bad things were. There was no point. Dr. Sungmin studied the swarm data with intense focus. He asked questions about their biology, their reproduction methods, how they incorporated other species' technology. He was treating this like a scientific problem, which it was, but also so much more. HFY analyzed the tactical displays. She was seeing patterns. Bora could tell. The young human's eyes were tracking fleet movements, analyzing response times, calculating probabilities. Captain Da-Yun listened to everything. Then she asked the question that had been hanging in the air since the humans arrived. Why did you quarantine us if you knew you might need us someday? The conference room got very quiet. This was the moment of truth. The Union would have to admit their mistake or try to justify their fear. Archivist Hyun-woo answered. He did not try to soften it. Humans were deemed too dangerous. Their world bred violence. They fought wars constantly. They had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. The Council feared they would bring chaos to the galaxy, so they sealed Earth away. It was a decision based on fear. Perhaps justified. Perhaps not. But it was done. Captain Da-Yun's expression hardened. Her voice was cold when she spoke. And now you need that chaos to save you. Need the violent Deathworlders you were so afraid of. Interesting timing. Bora flinched. The words were harsh but accurate. The Union had abandoned humanity out of fear. Now they were begging for help. The hypocrisy was painful to acknowledge. Tae-Yang tried to explain. The Council made a mistake. They admitted that now. Humanity deserved better, deserved inclusion. But the past could not be changed. Only the future mattered. If humans helped, they would be welcomed into the Union as full members. Equal status, no restrictions. The quarantine would end. Earth would have a voice in galactic affairs. Da-Yun considered this. Then she asked to consult with her officers. The Union delegation left them alone. In the privacy of the conference room, the humans discussed their options. Sungmin wanted to help immediately. This was a chance to save lives and earn humanity's place in the galaxy. HFY was cautious. The swarm was formidable. Getting involved meant committing to total war. But if they did nothing and the swarm eventually reached human space, they would face it alone. Captain Da-Yun made her decision. They would help. Not because the Union deserved it, but because letting the swarm win meant eventually facing them anyway. Better to fight with allies, even unreliable ones, than alone. And maybe humanity could prove something. Prove they were not the monsters everyone feared. Prove they could be heroes. She called the Union delegation back. Told them Earth would assist. But there would be conditions. Human commanders would have authority over combined operations. Union ships would follow human tactical doctrine. And after this was over, humanity would have full membership in the Union. Equal partners. Not junior members. Not probationary status. Full equals. Take it or leave it. Bora did not hesitate. She agreed to everything. The Union was in no position to negotiate. If human tactics could stop the swarm, she would follow any orders. Learn any methods. Do whatever it took. The alternative was extinction. Compared to that, pride meant nothing. The alliance was formed. Humanity and the Galactic Union. United against the Vraketh swarm, it was imperfect. Built on desperation and old wounds. But it was a start. And sometimes a start was all you needed. Captain Da-Yun shook hands with High Admiral Bora, a human gesture. Bora had researched it during the meeting. It meant agreement, partnership, trust. She hoped they could live up to that trust. Both species. The galaxy depended on it. The emergency lights cast red shadows across the council chamber. Counselor Tae-Yang stood before the assembled leaders of the Galactic Union, his crystalline body refracting the dim light into fractured rainbows. He tried to keep his voice steady, but even his kind could not hide fear completely. The reports scrolling across the holographic displays told a story of extinction. Another colony world had gone silent 3 hours ago. The Vraketh swarm was moving faster than anyone predicted. High Admiral Bora sat in her command chair, the bioluminescent patterns on her skin pulsing dark purple. Fear. In her long career, she had commanded fleets across a dozen sectors. She had negotiated peace treaties and defended trade routes. But nothing prepared her for this. The swarm had destroyed 3 of her fleets in the past 6 months. She still heard the psychic screams of her crews dying in the void. Thousands of voices, all cut short in an instant. The Vracath were unlike anything the Union had faced before. They were not interested in territory or resources in the traditional sense. They consumed everything. Entire planets stripped to the core. Populations absorbed into their biomechanical collective. Warships torn apart and rebuilt as hybrid monstrosities. The swarm grew stronger with every victory, incorporating the technology and biology of their victims. Archivist Hyunwoo hovered near the back of the chamber. The ancient artificial intelligence watched the proceedings through sensors embedded in his spherical metal body. His databases held 10,000 years of galactic history. He had seen civilizations rise and fall, wars and peace, progress and regression. But this was different. The mathematical projections were clear. At the current rate of advance, the swarm would reach the Union core worlds within 6 standard months. After that, total collapse within a year. The council chamber erupted in argument. Some called for retreat to the inner systems, abandoning the outer colonies to buy time. Others demanded they stand and fight no matter the cost. A few suggested attempting communication with the swarm, though every previous attempt had failed. The Vracath did not negotiate. They did not compromise. They simply consumed. Taeyang waited for a pause in the shouting. Then he spoke the words that would change everything. His voice cut through the noise like crystal chimes. He proposed they contact humanity. The chamber fell silent. Then the protests began. Humanity, the quarantined species, the violent primitives from the Deathworld called Earth. 300 years ago, the Union had discovered them during a routine survey mission. First contact protocols were followed. Cultural exchanges began. Then the Union Council reviewed the data and made their decision. Humanity was too dangerous. Their planet was a Class 12 Deathworld, the highest danger rating in Union classifications. Earth was a nightmare, massive storms that could level cities, earthquakes that split continents, volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun, temperature extremes that ranged from boiling to freezing. And the life that evolved there was even worse. Apex predators at every level of the food chain. Humans had survived by becoming the ultimate predators themselves. They hunted creatures that could kill them with a single bite. They thrived in environments that would kill most Union species within hours. But it was not just their physical resilience that frightened the Union. It was their violence. Humans waged war on each other constantly. They killed for resources, for ideology, for territory, sometimes seemingly for sport. They had nearly destroyed themselves with nuclear weapons twice. They created diseases as weapons. They had a word for total extinction warfare. They called it acceptable in certain circumstances. The Union Council had voted to quarantine the Sol system. Humanity was sealed away from the rest of the galaxy. Beacon satellites were placed at the edge of their space with a simple message in every known language. Go no further. Return home. You are not ready. Some counselors felt guilty about the decision. Most felt relieved. Let the humans sort out their own problems. The galaxy was safer without them. Now Taeyang stood before that same council and asked them to undo their decision. The protests were immediate and loud. Humanity was dangerous. They could not be trusted. They might be even worse than the swarm. What if they decided to conquer the Union instead of helping? What if exposure to their violence corrupted Union culture? Taeyang let them shout. Then he presented his argument with cold logic. The Union was losing. Every strategy had failed. Every fleet sent against the swarm was destroyed or scattered. Traditional Union warfare emphasized defense and preservation of life. It did not work against an enemy that could adapt to any tactic and grew stronger from every battle. The Union needed something different. They needed warriors who understood violence on a fundamental level. They needed survivors from a world that tried to kill them every day. He pulled up data from the archived human studies, psychological profiles, military history, survival statistics. Humans had survived 6 major extinction events on their planet. They had gone from primitive hunters to space explorers in less than 10,000 years. When faced with impossible odds, they did not surrender. They adapted. They found weaknesses. They won through sheer bloody determination. The council was not convinced. Then High Admiral Bo-Ra rose from her chair. The patterns on her skin shifted to deep blue. Sadness mixed with resolve. She had not spoken much during the debate. Now every eye turned to her. She was the most decorated military officer in Union history. If she had an opinion, it mattered. Bora described her first fleet's destruction. She did not spare the details. 500 ships reduced to debris in under an hour. The swarm had surrounded them, cut off their retreat, and torn them apart methodically. She had ordered evacuation. Most of the crew made it to escape pods. Then the swarm started harvesting the pods. She felt every death through her psychic connection. Young officers who had graduated months ago, veteran crew who had served for decades, all consumed by the swarm. Her own escape pod drifted through the wreckage for 18 hours before rescue arrived. She had plenty of time to think. The Union's way was not working. They needed help. If humanity was their only chance, then pride was meaningless. Better to live with dangerous allies than die with refined principles. The chamber grew quiet. Archivist Hyunwoo processed the emotional data. The tide was turning. He added his own analysis. According to his calculations, humanity's last known position was the Sol system, third planet from their star. When quarantined, they possessed primitive spaceflight but no faster-than-light capability. That was 300 years ago. If they survived their own violence, if they continued advancing, they might now possess the technology to help. Or they might have destroyed themselves. It was impossible to know without breaking the quarantine and looking. Tae Yang called for a vote. The holographic displays showed the council members' choices as they registered. Green for yes, red for no, yellow for abstaining. The results came in slowly. The chamber held its breath. When the final vote registered, the display showed the results. The motion passed by a single vote. They would send the signal. They would contact humanity. They would break the quarantine and hope the choice saved them rather than dooming them. Archivist Hyunwoo immediately began preparing the message. It needed to be in languages humanity would understand. He pulled up the linguistic databases from 3 centuries ago: English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, Hindi. A dozen more. The message would broadcast in all of them. It would explain the situation briefly. The Galactic Union was under attack. They were losing. They needed help. Please respond. The transmission array was programmed. The message was loaded. Bora gave the authorization code. The signal launched into the void, traveling faster than light toward a small yellow star system on the edge of Union space. Toward Earth, toward humanity, toward an answer that might save them all or condemn them to something worse than the swarm. Now they could only wait. And hope and prepare for whatever came next. In the red-lit chamber, surrounded by the desperate leaders of a dying civilization, Tae Yang looked at the star charts and wondered what kind of species humanity had become in 300 years of isolation. Warriors, monsters, saviors or nothing at all, just empty worlds and silent ruins. Soon they would know. The message was sent. There was no taking it back.